This game may be one of the greatest attacks on the center I have ever seen. It is astonishing the way Magnus Carlsen dismantles the center in this game. And even more amazing, it was played blindfold. This was the Melody Amber blindfold played in Nice in 2010. His opponent, the great Levon Aronian, and he has the white pieces. Carlsen has black. Let us jump right in. Knight f3, knight f6, c4, and g6. Looks like Carlsen is either going to play a King's Indian or a Grunfeld. After knight c3, bishop to g7. We see a King's Indian on the board, a pleasant surprise. And one thing Carlsen said about the King's Indian is that computers have a tough time evaluating it. That's one of the reasons when he plays it, it's one reason he likes to do so. e4, clamping down on the d5 square, d6, d4 castles, bishop to e2, and e5, just an orthodox mainline classical King's Indian. White has a few choices here, but Aronian plays the main line of castling. And now knight to c6. Magnus goes after that d4 pawn, and of course d5 gaining space. The knight goes to e7. And the plan is simple. The execution is complex. Black's plan is to play f5 and attack on the king side. White's plan is to play c5 and attack on the queen side. Knight to e1. So this knight can go to d3 and support the c5 push. Also, white can play f3 in response to black's f5. Knight to d7, unblocking the pawn and also adding some control over the c5 square. Knight to d3, f5, and now bishop to d2. This gives white black a chance to make a mistake, like f4. If f4 is played here, that's a strategic error because of bishop to g4 from white. An important thing to remember in these locked structures is that a light squared bishop is black's most important minor piece, and if white can trade it off, that's a real strategic advantage for white. But Magnus does not do that, of course. He plays knight to f6, increasing his pressure on the center. f3, and king to h8. The king is sort of out of the... It's harder to get at it, and it's less vulnerable on this light square diagonal. Also, this knight at e7 might want to use g8 as a square to get active. But here Aronian makes a cunning move. He plays g4. And the idea is if black plays f4 here, it's much harder for black to break through on the king side in this type of position because of these pawns at f3 and g4. I mean, it maybe can still be done, but it's more difficult to do so. And if black just takes, white takes, and white is fine here. Pieces will get traded off, and he's got more space. So Magnus, seeing that, decides to make a cunning move himself. He plays the move c6. And this is the beginning of relentless pressure on the center. He's saying, well, you played a destabilizing move in front of your king, making it more vulnerable. So instead of locking the structure, I'm going to try to open up the center and get at your king that way. Also, by the way, the queen has access to b6 right now. And so if I can take this center apart, your king is going to be in big trouble in a different way. So king to g2 is played. That gets off of this diagonal, helps control f3. And so how does black further undermine this central structure? b5. Attacking, again, the base of the pawn chain, and there's no convenient way for white to retake either of these pawns. If he takes with the c pawn, then d5 collapses. If he takes here, then pawn takes, gaining a tempo on the knight. So b3, defending. How does Carlsen add more pressure to the center? Boom, a5. Continues to undermine the chain by going after the base. Threats of a4, completely undermining this entire structure of pawns. Knight to f2, defends g4 and e4. And now Magnus plays b4. The idea is to kick this knight away so it's no longer influencing the center of the board. So knight to a4 is played. So, again, I ask you, how does black increase his pressure on white's center? Bishop to b7. The idea is to add the bishop to the pressure in the center, but one thing that can happen here, and remember, this is because this g4 move made the white king so vulnerable, potentially vulnerable, is that black can take on d5 and then sacrifice a piece and open up this long diagonal. All these pawns are in the way right now, but black can clear them out. And that's exactly what Carlsen does. Rook to c1, fe4, fe4, pawn takes cd or ed5 in this case. So what does Magnus do here? That's right, he sacrifices a piece, but this is an easy sacrifice to make, really. Pawn takes, knight takes. So even though black has given up a piece, he's got 2 pawns and this beautiful bishop aiming at this incredibly vulnerable king on g2. The king goes to g1 to get out of the way of the line of attack. But now e4. The threat, of course, is e3, which would fork the bishop and knight. But more importantly, and the real reason for the move, is to open up this diagonal for the bishop, particularly this d4 square, where it can create all kinds of trouble. So knight takes pawn, and that's what happens. Bishop to d4 check, and this is really tough for white. If he tries to block with the knight, then queen to f6, piling on. Rook, queen, and bishop all piling on. And there's no real easy way to deal with this. If he plays a move like bishop to e1 to defend the knight, then knight to f4 is coming with the threat of knight to h3 mate. And the position just completely collapses there. And if instead of bishop to e1, he plays queen to e1, then knight f4 again with the threat of mate. After bishop takes, queen takes, again, the position is collapsing. There's the threat of queen to e4, followed by queen to g2 mate. And notice the knight could not capture the queen because it's pinned. And there's just, white's just crushed here. So he doesn't block with the knight. He instead blocks with the rook. Rook takes f2, knight takes f2, queen to h4, threatening queen takes knight. So queen to e1 to defend the knight. Rook to f8, attacking the knight a third time. And now white is in big, big trouble. He makes a desperate move here. Bishop to f3. He knows he's losing the bishop. Now, they're blindfold, so maybe he's hoping Magnus got the pieces sort of mixed up in his head, but he did not. Rook takes bishop. Queen to e4. With the idea, of course, if Magnus misses the next move, he could play queen takes d4 check, but obviously Magnus does not. Queen to f2 check, and Aronian resigns. After king to h1, which is forced, he has some nice moves. Knight to e3 is a very nice move, attacking the queen, and if queen takes bishop, queen to g2 is mate, because the knight would defend the queen. Now, some may say, well, it was a blindfold game, and that may explain the imbalance here. Maybe. But even with that, this is one of the most beautiful destructions of the center I have ever seen in chess history. Really great game from Magnus. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you again soon at Chess Dog. Goodbye.